Okay, today we're going to be talking about inbound lead generation and the psychology behind it. Not so much practices, but really the fundamental breakdown of why it works and why businesses, if they subscribe to the psychology, should implement it. I feel like it could be a waste of time for some businesses if they aren't aligned behind the reason, and some businesses do it just for the sake of doing it, just to fit in, just because all their competitors are doing it. And I think that's the wrong reason to get into inbound lead generation. And if they were to do it right and correct a mindset, then they could see a serious business impact. In order to do well in inbound lead generation, there's one ideology you need to subscribe to in order to have success. And I'm going to dive into why that is in just a moment. But what this ideology is understanding that the sales landscape has forever changed. And by that, I mean sales are no longer dependent on building relationships. They're dependent on thought leadership and establishing a reputation based off expertise. If you shook your head at that, and I'm sure plenty of you did, unfortunately, inbound lead generation will not be successful for you because that is the foundation principle of inbound lead generation. Everything else will be a futile effort and unfortunately a waste of money, and I'm warning you now. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. Let's talk about this change of landscape. If you think about 25 years ago, who were the industry leaders in your particular field? Most likely these individuals were published authors. They built some sort of sizable business in your industry. They wrote a book about some specific topic within your industry. They were featured in publications. They were featured on different various outlets that brought authority to them. These individuals did not have to pick up the phone and nurture long-term relationships with their clientele because their authority superseded that demand or what they thought or what you may think is a requirement to build relationships. They were seen as the experts. And what's beautiful is that was 25 years ago. And today in 2020 and in the 21st century, we have access to tools that make thought leadership more accessible for you to produce. Going back to the example of thinking about the experts in your industry from a few decades ago and how they came to be by sharing their expert knowledge, which may in fact be the same expert knowledge that you have, but not just generating content. They generated something called insights. And insights are very different from content because you even subscribe to the notion of establishing them as experts because you're familiar with their field, and yet they were still able to teach you something. Am I right? You probably wouldn't have thought of the people that you didn't learn anything from. You're probably thinking of examples of individual practitioners that taught you something. By divulging these nuggets, you can then establish yourself as a thought leader, which builds your reputation based around your expert opinion and the facts you divulge, which then transforms into a clientele that subscribes to the idea that you know what you're talking about. So how is this tethered to what I said earlier about the forever changed sales landscape? The reason is all around discipline. You need to recognize what you're doing with your established thought leadership, with the insights you're generating to create this inbound lead generation, because it's a long form game. It's not easy. And I often tell people before engaging with them on helping them with their strategy on inbound lead generation, that in order to get the discipline or at least the motivation to continue with something that you're not exactly seeing results from right away, kind of like working out, you need to subscribe to a higher purpose. And if you don't have that foundation locked in the change of the sales landscape, there's no reason anyone is going to stick with this sort of long-term plan beyond a few weeks.